This is the Movers and Shakers podcast, episode number 6.
Welcome to the Movers and Shakers podcast, the place where high achievers share their secrets on how to take your life, career, and business to the next level. And now, here's your host, Rob Wilson.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Movers and Shakers podcast. I am your host, Rob Wilson, and I am way beyond excited today because we've got a very powerful episode for you. Now, I know you guys always hear people say that, listen, if you hate your job, then you need to go and do something else. But I got some questions for you today. What if you actually like your job? What if you work for a billionaire and you travel all over the world? What if you got some fancy degree that people think you should be using? And what if you just happen to feel like, despite all of those things, that you were called to do something else? Well, today, guys, this is why I'm so excited, because we're going to hear from someone who was in that exact situation, Paul Carrick Brunson. Now, Paul left a high-powered finance job to become a matchmaker, and he has not looked back for 1 second since then. He's landed a show on Oprah's own network. He's done numerous other national TV appearances, and he has expanded from a one-man show to now have a team of matchmakers helping people find happiness all across the country. So guys, if you're looking for the blueprint on how to leave your job and pursue your passion, this is the episode for you. Now, I know some of you are in the gym working out or you're driving. Don't worry. You'll get all the resources you need at my website, robwilson.tv/Paul Brunson. All of the information will be there in the show notes. But until then, here's the interview with Paul Carrick Brunson. All right, everybody, welcome back to another edition of the Movers and Shakers podcast. Of course, I am your host, Rob Wilson, and I'm very excited today to have our guest, Paul Brunson, with us today. If you haven't heard of Paul before, he's got an awesome story. He's been called the Modern Day Hitch. He's hanging out with all sorts of very influential people in the world. He's an influential person himself, and we're going to get a lot of tips today on how he's achieved so much success. So, Paul, thank you very much for being on the show today.
I'd say it's my honor to be with you, Rob. So thank you very much for having me.
So for anybody in the audience that may not be as intimately familiar with your background, can you just give us a little bit, can you set the stage and tell us your background and what you're doing now?
Sure. So background was really finance. I went to school undergrad for business law, then went to grad school for business, and ended up doing investment banking, doing some other finance stuff, but then eventually landing in a really great opportunity where I managed money for a very wealthy family out of Turkey, and I kind of managed all of their U.S. investments. And they invested primarily in educational assets. And did that for a number of years, and at the same time started a nonprofit organization. So I always joke that, I was being true to my Jamaican heritage. I had a couple
job.
Yeah. It's funny, my grandfather, may he rest in peace. He before he passed away, I think I had like 4 jobs, and he called me lazy. He was like, "You're lazy." Like, that's all you have is 4 jobs. You're lazy. But great grandfather. He was awesome. So did all that, had the nonprofit. And what was interesting with the nonprofit is we provided academic test prep to underserved students. So we did a lot of ACT, SAT prep, math, science, tutoring, that kind of stuff. And it was a summer camp of 2008 where I was working the summer camp at the registration table, checking all the students in, and realized that out of 100 kids in this camp, not one had 2 parents in the household. It blew me away, and that led me into a whole other career based off of that. And I ended up becoming a matchmaker. I became the first full-time African-American male matchmaker, which is kind of crazy that I would be the first. And then becoming a matchmaker, not just me being a matchmaker, but growing an agency, which now our matchmaking agency is one of the most recognized in the world as far as matchmakers. We're award-winning. We've won awards consecutively over the last few years in our industry. So that has led us into other avenues. It's led us into television. It's led us into to the movies. It's led us into book publishing. Social media obviously is important to all of our businesses, and so that's played a role. So now, I'll be honest with you, I don't even really know how to frame what I do. I just joined LinkedIn, which is bad, but you know how LinkedIn you have to indicate your industry. I had no idea what industry to indicate. So we're doing a little bit of everything right now, but most importantly, just really living, living a life of my dreams right now. I'll be quite honest with you. So that's where I am right now.
So can you take us back then, to that moment when you're working, you're managing money for this family, you're also working at the summer camp, and then you have this moment where you gain this insight that these kids didn't have two-parent households. So can you talk about that moment and what it really was that drove you to make a change? And then how did you go from managing money to then becoming a matchmaker?
Yeah, really good question, because that moment was really a culmination of many moments over my life, right? I was blessed. I grew up with two parents in the household. And what was really interesting to me is I grew up in New York, in Long Island, and I lived in a Black community in Long Island, and everyone had two parents in the household. Like that was status quo. Everyone had two parents. I then my family moved to Northern Virginia when I was in middle school. And once we got to Northern Virginia, it was status quo for everyone to be in a single parent household. And that really hit me. It registered. I didn't get it, why that was, or really what impact that was truly making on us as children. And then over time, as I got into academic work, a lot of tutoring, a lot of test preparation, I saw how not having two parents in the household had a dramatic impact academically, had a dramatic impact socially on these kids. And so when I then am sitting in front of one after another, after another, after another child who's saying, yeah, I live with mom, I live with grandma, I live with auntie, very few men even were in the household, it really blew me away. And I thought at that moment, there's something I believe I can do here. And I didn't immediately become a matchmaker at that point. It took a year to really figure out where my lane was and what I could do. And ultimately, what happened to me is it was a light bulb moment, and it was stepping out on faith. And, Howard Thurman, one of my favorite guys, like period, is Howard Thurman. One of my favorite quotes comes from him, and that is, don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do that, because what the world needs is more people who've come alive. And I truly felt like I came alive at that moment. And so the transition was actually not very hard, because I had decided, I've been a serial entrepreneur, started businesses, going back to maybe 12, 11 years old. And I've always had a passion for idea creation and the execution of ideas. But namely, I've always had a passion for community building, always had a passion for, kind of the 101, right, of business. And so long story short is, matchmaking in the space that I evolved to was like this culmination of everything. And it was a very easy decision for me to make, to leave a great job for my true passion.
So did you sort of go cold turkey with this? Did you start building the business in parallel with your job and then decide that there was a good time to leave? How did that work out for you?
I went cold turkey. I've done enough moonlighting in former careers to know that, you can't expect to get 100% yield giving 50% of your time. It just doesn't happen. And I understand everyone has got bills and, we've got expenses and that kind of thing. But I decided what I was going to do is I was going to commit fully. I wasn't going to toe dip. I was going to jump into the pool. And what I ended up doing, and this is just real talk, and I don't talk a lot about this, but I saved. I didn't have a lot of money that I had at that time saved, but I had about 2 paychecks worth. My wife then liquidated her 401k. She liquidates her 401k. So it's not like we had lots of. I mean, we were pulling off of savings that weren't really even our own savings. Used that, and I spent 1 year just preparing. Right? I decided I wasn't going to run up into matchmaking all willy-nilly, but I wanted to prepare and get the theory down. I wanted to practice and get the practice down. I wanted to begin to figure out, okay, what's my niche going to be? What's my entry point in the market going to be? How am I going to be able to sustain? Like, I spent 1 year studying, practicing, getting mentorship, training, and then 1 year later, I entered the space.
Wow. So there's a lot there that I want to dig into. First, can you talk about the dynamics of wanting to start a passion business like this and perhaps having to convince your spouse that it's the right thing to do, and then doing something as, maybe dramatic as liquidating a 401k? Can you discuss, those steps a little bit?
Sure. So I'll tell you, it didn't take much convincing. What's really, really interesting when I look back, and I think this speaks to the strength of a relationship, or should I say the compatibility in a relationship, is that when I had just graduated from Georgetown, right? Great school. And all of my classmates were going on to do, like phenomenal stuff. And I was working for a billionaire, a Turkish billionaire. We were, sailing up and down the Mediterranean. Like, it was straight, like, baller like stuff, right? Everyone in my life said, Paul, like, you have got the greatest life right now. There's no way you would trade this for anything. I then said I was going to become a matchmaker. Folks were like, commit this boy right now. He's crazy. Like, he's on something. He's like, something's crazy. My wife and my mother, they were literally the only two people that were like, yeah, you go do that. I think the reason why, and I go back and I have thought about this, is that what makes for a strong relationship is shared values, and shared personality type and all that. But shared values is the core of it. My values are the same as my wife's values. We value, family and spirituality, but we also value ambition. We value creativity. We value innovation. This idea that I was presenting was entirely wrapped within those values. So I don't think it took her more than 3 seconds to say, yeah, let's do that. And once again, it wasn't like, okay, I had to convince her that I was going to do it. It was, let's do this together. And she was like, yeah, let's do it. And it's just, I think it speaks to compatibility. Or maybe she's just as crazy as I am. Maybe that's what it is.
So what was it, the fact that, well, let me take a step back. Is this something that you guys talked about before you got married, that, hey, yes, I have this great job, maybe one day I'm going to want to start a business, or maybe one day I'm going to want to go back to school? Are these discussions that you had before walking down the aisle?
No, we didn't discuss it, but we dated for easily 8 years before we got married, which I want to say something about that, because we talk about how what the divorce rate is in this country. It fluctuates between 48 and 52%. And everyone's, thinking, oh my God, what's wrong with the kind of the fabric of marriage? But really, a lot of the issue is that folks that have no business getting married are getting married. And a big problem is people are getting married too early without fully knowing each other, without being able to vet out the values and the personality type and the vision and vet out all those things. We had been together for so long, and it was 8 years because we dated through college, right? So you got 4 years of college in there. But we knew each other so well that it wasn't necessarily a conversation. She knew in college I was the guy trying to sell everything, in college, right? And so she knew that. She knew that was a part of my personality, just as I knew her personality was one of a supporter. My wife is the quintessential. Carl Jung actually gave us the framework for personality types. Initially, he said, everyone falls into one of 4 categories. You're either a promoter, right? That's me, big entrepreneurial ideas, right? Or you're an analyst. You see things as either black or white. Or you are a controller. A controller is like, by any means necessary, let's get this done. And then last but not least, you have the supporter personality type. And the supporter is the team player. My wife is a supporter. I'm a promoter. It flows very well together. And so if you can figure out those things while you are dating, right, while you're courting each other, you stand to have a much stronger likelihood of a successful marriage or even a partnership. It works the same way, I think, for a business partnership. You got to share values. You got to be able to communicate, because if you can't do that, you can't be in a relationship with anybody.
Wow, you're giving us a lot of information here, and I just want to make sure everybody knows they can get links and they'll get all the quotes and things that you mentioned today on the show notes page, robwilson.tv/Paul Brunson. But sort of last question about your transition. Was it difficult because so many other people around you were saying, Paul, you're crazy. You've got the greatest life. I'd trade with you in a second. Did it make it harder, or was it that, hey, I got my mom and my wife, I'm good?
Man, you know, when you've got people who you care about, right, and care about you, telling you not to do something, I think that it's only human to listen to that. You know, even the most risk-averse person in the world, you still listen to that. But to me, I think this is part of just kind of my DNA. And I joke about the Jamaican part of it, but, you know, my family is from Jamaica. And I think there is something there. It's not just a West Indian grind. I think it's any immigrant, you know, grind. Is that I am so scared of leaving this earth without, you know, realizing my full potential, that is my drive. You know, someone's opinion is not my drive. You know, trolls saying, you know, crazy comments. That's like, my drive is really being able to be my best self, you know, and leave a legacy for my family, for my children in particular. And so, sure, I listen to that, but that never guides my direction. It helps to just inform me in making future decisions, but it doesn't guide my direction.
Wow, I've often told people when they ask me what's my biggest fear in life, and I say exactly that. Besides something happening to people that I care about, is, you know, not having lived up to my potential. And, you know, I think I'd have to credit my parents and also my teachers when I was younger, because they made me feel like there were great things expected of me, and they made me feel like I was smart. And I don't know if they were lying or not, but at least I believed them.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think it's really shaped, you know, who I become, you know, thus far. So you make the decision that you're going to take this leap. And now you've got a year where you've got to figure out how to actually do this. What are some of the steps that you took to start building your business?
All right. Great question. So, prior to that, just know that, you know, I'm, you know, Series 7, did my first level of my CFA, went to a business school. Like, I understood the basics of business. And I just want to just kind of stop right there and say that is imperative. You know, there are, and I can speak from my industry in particular with matchmaking, there are thousands of matchmakers. And I recall going to a matchmaker conference once, and the core of the conversation was around how to create a P&L statement, you know, a profit and loss statement. And these were folks who had been in the business for 5, 6, 7 years, just trying to understand what a P&L statement is. You can't be in business for 5, 6 years and, you know, successful and not know what that is off the jump, right? And so that's not me like being arrogant. I'm just saying that there are fundamentals to being a business owner that you must have in place. And so I was blessed to have had those in place right from the jump. And so I was able to focus on other areas. So the two main areas that I focused on was learning about this thing called matchmaking, right? Is it smoke and mirrors? Is there science to it? Pickup artistry? You know, I basically spent 1 year reading hundreds of books. I went and did a mentorship. And this is something that I strongly recommend. I found a woman by the name of Rachel Greenwald, Harvard MBA consultant turned McKinsey consultant, I think, also, you know, turned matchmaker. in my opinion, she was the smartest. She was the best in the business. And I basically flew out to where she lived in Denver, and I spent time with her and her husband, who's a VC, spent time learning the business from them. Went to every conference I could, called and interviewed every matchmaker I could, not just the good folks, but the folks who I thought were marginal, just to understand their perspective. I then started taking on pro bono clients, right? Working with pro bono clients to get my feet wet. And so I spent a significant amount of time learning really the art and science of matchmaking. And then the last thing I did, and this is something that I thank God that I did. It was a fluke that I did it, but I spent the other half of my time focused on social media, learning social media. When I started matchmaking, this is 2009, I didn't have a Facebook account. I didn't have a MySpace. I didn't have Twitter. I didn't have anything. I was so anti-social media, but I realized that social media was my ticket. This was like my Willy Wonka golden ticket to get into the chocolate factory, right? And so I learned everything I could. I studied everybody that I could. Wayne Sutton, Gary Vaynerchuk, Chris Brogan, Jay Baer. All of these folks I studied. I went to their presentations. I flew and went to conferences, and I read all their books. And social media is really what allowed me to get into the industry. And then once I kind of got my foot in the door, then I was able to prove what I knew based off of my time learning the art and science of it. And then I was able to sustain it because of the business experience that I had. And so it was this like perfect storm that happened to me with the growth of the business. But that's how I went about doing it.
Paul, I love this because this is like textbook on how to take your passion and really turn it into a business. So thank you for everything that you're sharing with us. Can you maybe tell us something about a time when along this journey when perhaps you failed at something or something didn't go the way that you wanted to? Because a lot of times we hear people's stories and their bios and it sounds all great and it seems like it was a straight path from 0 to 60 miles an hour. Yep. But can you talk about maybe if there were some bumps along the road?
Oh yeah, it was funny on where was it? On Facebook. I had posted. I just became a blogger for Huffington Post, and I was like really excited about it because I'd always wanted to be a Huffington Post blogger. And I posted it on Facebook, and one of my boys hit me, on GChat. He was like, "Man, like you're killing it, man. You're killing it. Congrats! Like you just get win after win after win." And I was like, "Nah, man. Really, I only post the wins." I said, I've got easily 3 times the losses for wins, like easily. And so I'm losing consistently. But this is another, I think, very important aspect of business, especially in this day and age where, there's so much going on, like there's so much noise, is I almost look at it like, people talk about irons in the fire, but I always think of it like I'm juggling like, balls, right? And my goal is just to keep balls in the air, but I keep adding them. But I know I don't have the ability to juggle 8, 9 balls. It's just impossible for me to do it. I don't have that skill. So I know that balls are going to drop. But I'm adding so many in the air that the ratio to drop to what I can maintain is blown out. Like I'm dropping so many more. But the fact is that I'm picking more. I'm picking the additional one up in the air. So I lose all the time. And when I say I lose all the time is I get rejected. I'll give you a story, right? I'll give you a story I've never told. Is after I started matchmaking, I used social media, right, to get in. How did I use social media? I created a web series. My web series was called The Modern Day Matchmaker. It was like just me doing crazy stuff out on the street in DC, interviewing people and that kind of thing. Within 1 week of putting that out, I got contacted by a Hollywood, studio, and they were like, "Hey, Paul, we want to do a deal with you." So I ended up doing a deal with them. That, through a whole bunch of other things, led me to doing a show with Oprah Winfrey, right? On the Oprah Winfrey Network. Real big, like amazing. Like I'm with Oprah. This is crazy. I'm with my world is just I'm just floating on cloud, not nine. I'm floating on cloud 99, right? So I then start taking other meetings with other networks, right? And there's this one network that was basically preparing to offer me something huge, like really, really big. And so it's like, okay, this is great. You know, this is great. So go in, meet with them, talk to them. They basically, after, you know, weeks of doing this, they said, no, you know what? We can't do it, right? Now, why? Here's the reason why. They said, Paul, you're just not black enough for us. Like, that's the reason why. That's the reason why we can't do it. So then here's the thing. So I'm like, oh man, okay, all right. You know, of course I'm thinking this is stupid, but at the same time, I'm trying to get my Hollywood on. So I go to another network, spend another series of weeks with this network, working with them, about to drop something big. Network cancels it. Paul, you're too black for us. I was like, okay. So within, you know, maybe a month's time, two projects that could have changed the course of what I was doing, I get denied for what I think are some BS reasons. But I guess the point of the story is that I never talked about those really publicly. I'm losing all of the time. Like all of the time I'm losing, but I'm picking up those wins. And I think that's really important. And I guess the overall point I can make is that it's very important to be gritty. Like you've got to be resilient. It's not about, am I going to lose? It's yes, you are going to lose. And can you lose 100 times and then still try on the 101st time? That's gritty. And folks who are gritty win eventually.
Wow. I mean, awesome stuff. I mean, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, huh? In Hollywood.
Yeah, man. It's a rough place. It's a rough place.
So take me to, so we've heard about your job before, your transition, you decide to go on your own, these things that you're doing to build a business, going to conferences, reading books. Was there something that came along, was like that was your big break, that allowed you to become a Huffington Post blogger or those sorts of things? I think people really want to dig in and know how did this business really start to grow for you?
Man, you know what, Rob? Do you watch or did you watch Breaking Bad?
Oh yeah, I did. I did. I wasn't on it in the beginning, and then when there was so much hype about the finale that I had to just go back to Netflix and watch every episode in like 3 weeks. So I did. I am now indoctrinated into the Breaking Bad family.
All right, say I did the same thing. But by the way, I have not seen the last 5 episodes, so don't say anything about that. But I will say this: the reason why I brought it up is, it's a phenomenal show. But basically, Walt, you know, the teacher in that who's Breaking Bad, is there. In my opinion, there wasn't one thing that turned him, but you see over the course of multiple seasons or multiple years that he slowly, right, becomes like one evil somebody, right? And so it took time. What's happened with me is the same thing. Is there's not one moment that like got us on Oprah, you know, or one moment that got us to Huffington Post, or one moment that got us, you know, an award for matchmaking. It is a combination, and really the compound effect, right, of multiple things happening. And this is the big reason why it's very important for us to, you know, this is Jim Collins stuff, is you want to fail fast to succeed faster. That's the key, is you want to keep pushing yourself to the brink of failure, because ultimately when you do that, what happens is either you win because you didn't fail, or you win anyway because you got the lesson from the failure that will help you the next time. And so I can't point to one thing. It's definitely been compound. I'll say this though, real quick, is I have an amazing team. And that is very, very important. Like people just see Paul C. Brunson or Paul Carrick Brunson. They go to my, you know, Facebook or Instagram. They just see Paul C. Brunson. But like real talk, there's probably at least 27 people working either full-time, part-time, or interning / volunteering who support me every day. And so it takes an enormous team to have done what we've done. And so the team and building the team and the focus on the team is everything. I always say this, is that strategy is everything. You are not going to sustain anything in life that's platonic, romantic, right? Business, nothing without strategy. And the very first place to begin your strategizing is team building. That's the very first place to look at when you're strategizing anything. And so team is critical.
Did you bring on a team right from the beginning, or was there a point where you said, hey, I can't handle all of this stuff, I've got to bring in some more manpower?
I knew initially I wanted to scale quickly. I knew that scaling was going to be important. And so right from the gate, I had this kind of this mindset of, I want to have multiple people doing A, B, and C. But I started, it was, myself, my wife. I had two really good friends who were helping me pro bono. So it started as a collective, like this loose collective. And then over time, I started pulling on folks. And it really wasn't until just this last year that we started to really grow our matchmaking business. We went from just my wife and I to now we have 9 people working in the matchmaking business. And then it wasn't until maybe 3 months ago that I started building out all of the other pieces of our business, in terms of with team members. So like that 27 really just happened in the last year. Before that, it might have been maybe 5, 6 of us.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's talk about the pipeline. How you feel your business with prospects, and in turn prospects and the customers. You talked a little bit about social media and starting from nothing. Where are you at in terms of your social media following, and how are you leveraging that in order to turn it into business?
Yeah, social media is everything. Right after this, this interview, I'm talking to my managing editor, who is really my cohort partner in crime for social media. We're all about analytics now. We track everything. And so in terms of kind of like sheer community numbers, we probably have about 400,000 people across all of our streams that do not overlap, because we're very particular about who overlaps. And so when you look at, from Twitter to Facebook to members, individuals on our email list, to Pinterest, to Google Plus, to YouTube, right? It's about 400,000 people. And we have a very high engagement rate within those 400. And we judge engagement by, you can judge engagement by a number of things. And then we also have a very high influence rate within those, especially according to when we look at clout and some of those things. Now, how we were able to really kind of put that together is it took time. And what I would say, I guess just real quick, is that I mentioned him already, and I probably should mention him 5 million times, but Gary Vaynerchuk is a guy who I actually just met last week, I think, or 2 weeks ago for the first time. He came here to DC. And to be honest with you, do everything Gary says. I've read every one of his books, probably every one of his blog posts, listened to all of his keynotes. The dude is brilliant. I know he has a lot of haters, but the bottom line is he's brilliant. He's great at what he does. And I would start with his book, Crush It. If you've not read Crush It, right? It looks like you read it, right?
No question. I'm a big Gary V fan, and I just got finished with Jab, 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 Right Hook. So we're right on the same page there.
Yeah. He's so, and that was the key. And then you'll begin to, develop your own, your own strategy from there. But it's a great blueprint.
What tool has been the best for you out of those social media tools?
Different at different times. And what I've noticed too is that we have a different audience on each one. Twitter definitely was most important early on because of Twitter. I got my book deal as a result of Twitter. We started doing like innovative things, like we started the first matchmaking game ever on Twitter. It was called Modern Day Matchmaker Wednesdays, and it gained some popularity. Started doing book clubs on Twitter. That was one of the ways that I connected with Oprah, and her team was on Twitter. And so Twitter early on was very important. But then I would say that Facebook took on a significant level of prominence for me, because what Facebook allowed was it was a much older user. Twitter was like this young kind of cool cocktail party, right? But Facebook was like a more mature meet and greet, for us. And through Facebook is really where we were able to drive clients. And I know that was a question that you asked about, the pipeline. And so we were not just able to drive clients. What happened with Facebook is we were able to drive visitors to our website. So the way that our pipeline, if you will, is set up is that and this is going to Michael Hyatt in his book Platform, which is another great guy.
A big fan of Michael Hyatt. Listen to the podcast. Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah. So he talks about, your blog being your home base, right? And so we look at our blog, paulcbrunson.com, as home base. And what we do with home base is we like to provide tremendous value. What we do is we provide practical advice for big dreams, right? Romantic and platonic. But we also use that to convert folks into paid customers through our matchmaking, through our coaching services. Now, where do those people come from? Well, sure, we try to do as much SEO as possible, but quite frankly, most of the folks come through Facebook. We have a ridiculously high conversion rate of folks that come in through Facebook, much lower for Twitter, even though we have twice the number of people who follow us on Twitter, right? And it's because it's a different demographic, it's a different, engagement level, and so Facebook became very important to us because Facebook was where the folks were coming from Facebook onto our website and converting either into paid clients or into, opting into the newsletter or that kind of thing. And so Facebook took on, significant importance. But I could tell you, I've now, just recently launched a Pinterest account, a Google Plus account, and LinkedIn account. And I said this weekend, and I know this is all the latest buzz, but Pinterest is going to be the king and the queen of all of those platforms. It just is. We can go into a long conversation about why, but it is. It's driving. Right now, I think the second most number of the second largest channel of blog traffic right now comes from Pinterest. Pinterest is incredible, and so I can see it changing over time for us and going to Pinterest.
Well, Paul, thanks. Now you just gave me a week full of work now, and I have to go figure out what Pinterest is all about because I have no idea what Pinterest is about. So thank you for that.
Hey, my pleasure. You're gonna become a pinning zombie.
All right. So audience is gonna kill me if we don't talk about this Oprah thing, and you touched on it a little bit because you said you sort of got in touch with Oprah's people through Twitter. So can you talk to us about how that happened? What the opportunity was with Oprah, and then maybe what that has done for your business since then?
Sure. So it was social media that connected me with her, and like without Facebook and Twitter, I never would have been able to say that I know Oprah. It came about the quick steps where I had a series, Modern Day Matchmaker series on YouTube, and it got very little viewership. It was like 12 views. And I know my mother was viewing it at least 10 times, right? So it was not a lot of viewership. But thank God some of the blogs, like people like Rich Jones, who had a blog called 3 Ways to Take It at that time, would pick up would pick it up and syndicate it. So I started syndicating it. It syndicated through Clutch Magazine and through some others. But it was Twitter where the buzz, if you will, the conversation around whatever theme I was talking about was happening. What then happened are some of the producers from the Oprah Winfrey Network saw that conversation happening right on Twitter, went to YouTube, then looked at the video, and then contacted me via Facebook. And a real quick story is I got contacted by one of the producers at the Oprah Winfrey Network via Facebook. And she was like, "Hey, I'm from the Oprah Winfrey Network. We want to talk to you." And I thought, yeah, that's one of my boys playing a trick. Delete. And I deleted it. And then she sent another message. Delete a second time. And then it was finally the third time that I responded. But her last name was Duck. it was like one of those where, so, but it was through Facebook, and then, proceeding to that, it was Twitter, and then it was YouTube. And so social media played the role in me connecting with her. And just long story short, as far as the effect, I mean, people talk about her having the Midas touch. There's no question about it. Because, I know her, because I've got pictures with her, because we did actually not one but two television shows together. We did a second one called Soul Pancake. Because of that affiliation, my life has permanently changed. Like it just has. When I do interviews like this, it's always a topic of conversation. Folks, want to know about her, and it has changed. It's been incredible, the change that it's made. I can't even place the value on it, and all I can say is I'm incredibly thankful, for not just her, but her entire team. The OWN team is awesome. Sherry, Salada, Eric Logan, the whole team has just been incredible. So thank you, folks. Thank you.
So at this point in your career, how do you define success?
Oh man, it's nothing but a journey. It is not the end destination. It's just not. To me, success is it boils down to the basics of of health, of being happy, and really what success is, is it is being able to consistently feed your values, right? My values, being creativity, innovation, spirituality, family. If I could keep feeding those and basically do things that involve all of those, I'm going to be happy. I'm going to feel successful. The moment that I can't do that I get restricted and I've got to do something else, I won't feel successful. And I think that's the reason why you can talk to billionaires, and I've worked for 2 billionaires now. And you could talk to some, and actually these 2 billionaires are very happy, but you could talk to some billionaires and they probably are not the most happy or feel the most successful. And then you could talk to, the young guy who is on the corner, selling his art, and he feels incredibly happy and successful. It's because of the ability to fulfill your values. I think that's really where it's at.
So what's next to come in the Paul Carrick Brunson empire? What can we look forward to seeing in the near future?
Oh man, near future, we have got, I know a lot of folks like to talk about, they've got big announcements. I have the biggest announcement that I'll have in my career, like coming up in probably the next 2 weeks. And so that I'm like super jazzed about, like super excited. But
I can't get the DJ Clue exclusive right now.
If lightning would, like a sniper would come down and just like hit me real quick if I said anything. But it's really cool. Really, really cool. And then, our matchmaking agency is really growing. That's really cool to see that it's growing. And then just the business entrepreneurship / mentorship side, there's a lot of stuff that I'm doing there. We have our first conference coming up this year called Unconventional Greatness Summit. It's kind of like TED meets hip hop, right? And so we're doing that in New York. Man, I tell you, I could keep going down the list of things I'm excited about, but man, I'm just excited to just like get up and keep doing this. That's really the truth, and have my son not pee in his pants. Like, he is 3 years old. That is like, if we can go a day with doing all that, and then he comes home from school and he hasn't peed in his pants, it's a good day. It's
the little things that count.
It's the little things. Yes.
So for folks who are out in the audience and listening, and what we really try to do on Movers and Shakers, as you've done so eloquently all throughout this interview, is give people some really specific steps that they can stop listening to this episode and go start to take action right away. Because, our audience knows that you can't move and shake if you don't start to take action. So what are some things that you would suggest that people do? Let's just say maybe they want to get into the matchmaking business, What are some steps that people could take to try to replicate your success?
Oh man, just contact me and talk to me. When I try to get into the business, I probably called 15, 20 different people, and nobody would talk to me. They, because they were trying to hide like whatever they thought they had. And the thing about it is that, no one is ever going to be able to do what you do, because you have a set of experiences that no one in the planet has ever had. Like that's what makes us all unique. And so don't ever feel like you've got to hold the secret sauce, because actually you are the secret sauce. It's not the idea, it's you. And so I'm totally transparent. So anybody that wants to get into the matchmaking space, wants to try to get into television, I forgot to mention I'm executive producing a TV show that's coming up. We're working on that. But anyone that wants to do anything that I have done, just like reach out to me, or not just me, reach out to other folks and be persistent in talking to them. But I think that's the first step. And then I'll give you a wild card for the second step. Try turning off the TV for like a month. Man, I see so many folks waste so much time on TV. And this is crazy because I just said I'm executive producing a TV show, right? But the fact of the matter is most of TV, what's on TV is garbage. Like, it's just garbage, and it's not helping you. It's actually to your detriment. It's not even like it's a qualitative unwind from the day. Most of it is like really garbage. And so try just pulling back from that and then replace that with something that you feel like you can consume of high value, a book, right? Which there's some books that are trash, but I'm talking about, quality book like Gary Vee's books, or, Michael Hyatt's books. Try doing, spending that time to, watch some TED Talks, but just pull back from TV, talk to some folks that you believe are knowledgeable in the space. I think just those two things you'll see a yield from.
Awesome. So real quick, can you tell us about your upcoming TV project?
Yeah, it hasn't been officially announced, but it's a project I've been working on for the last maybe 8 months. I'm executive producing it. I'm going to be on the show. We're going to be talking about relationships. It's going to be a talk show type format in the evening. I can't unveil the network, but it's going to be really cool stuff. It's going to be like, it'll kind of feel like a modern Love Line. Remember Love Line TV? Yeah. It'll feel like a more, like just kind of laid out, cool, modern Love Line.
Love it. Love it. So any parting words of advice that you have for our audience, and maybe you can share the best way for folks to reach out to you?
Man, parting words, I'll just say keep listening to and watching Rob's show. I know you're like, I didn't pay him to say that, but thank you. But that's real, because the main reason, Rob, I told you this, that I wanted to do this is because I looked at the lineup of folks that you're bringing on, and I have a high respect for the lineup. And so anytime, we're living in such a noisy world right now. I keep saying that, but we are. It's like there's more content that's produced in a 48-hour period now than was produced from the beginning of time to 2003. So it's a lot of content. And so if you can get around someone who knows how to curate good stuff, stick with that person or that thing. Rob is curating good stuff. Stick with him. And then as far as contacting me, Paul C. Brunson everywhere. So .com, or on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Google+, in Pinterest. Rob hit me up on Pinterest, but paulcbrunson.com.
First of all, thank you for those words. I really appreciate that. And I really appreciate your time today. You drop some bombs on the audience today, and I'm telling you, this may serve as the prototype for all future interviews. I may just say, before I interview you, go watch this, And this is what we're looking for. But seriously, I'm grateful to you for taking your time. I know you got a lot of different things going on, and we appreciate it. And we've learned so much today. And hopefully, we'll talk to you again soon after you make your big announcement.
All right, good stuff. I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Rob. Thank you for having me.
Well, there it is, everybody. You just got schooled. I almost feel like that was a class rather than an interview, but I got to send a very special thank you to Paul Brunson for being on the show and for dropping so much knowledge and very specific tips about how to create a business around your passion. Now, guys, notice I said create a business because pursuing your passion might be easy, but it's when you can make a real business out of it, that's when you're really going to be successful. So what were some of the key takeaways from this interview? Well, for me, I appreciate the fact that he instructed us to go and find a mentor, to call people who are doing the things that you want to be doing, and just listen and just ask them questions and figure out what are the most important pieces that you need to replicate in order for you to be successful. If you can't find somebody, then go and read some books. Even if you can find somebody, you should read the top books in your industry. Do you realize that you can get very successful people's innermost thoughts for less than it would cost for you to take that actual person out to lunch? And then, by the way, if you just go and read the book while you're at Barnes & Noble or another bookstore or the library, then all it costs you is your time. So there's no excuse for you not to learn the skills that you need to go ahead and be successful. So what's your action step for this week? Because movers and shakers know that you cannot get to the place that you want to be in life if you stand still. Okay. So your action step for this week is to come up with a list of 5 potential mentors to call and 5 of the top books in your industry, and to set a deadline for actually making the calls to those 5 people. No, the action step is not building the list. Set a deadline for making the calls to those 5 people and for reading those 5 books. And guys, if you do that, if you take heed to this action step, I guarantee that you'll have a strong foundation to start and go to build the business of your dreams. Okay. So guys, as always, thank you so much for spending your time with us this week. Don't forget that you can find all of the resources that we talked about today at the show notes page, robwilson.tv/Paul Brunson. And if you enjoyed the show or the other episodes that we've done so far, we would be grateful if you would leave us an honest review on iTunes. You can do that at robwilson.tv/iTunes. It's going to help me get better. It's going to improve the show, and it's going to help other people find the show as well so that they can get the inspiration, guidance, and information that they need to start the business of their dreams. So guys, once again, thank you for being here. I will see you next time, but until then, you get back to work.